gang, what's going on? Welcome in. You are listening to episode 157 of Byte That's weekly wrestling podcast. Thanks for tuning in and checking out the show. Remember, we are available every single Tuesday night on most podcast platforms, including our booty popping, or booty eating, I should say, YouTube channel. And there's a ton to talk about, including SummerSlam, NXT Takeover, and just a quick reminder, we have less than 2 weeks away until our Patreon giveaway concludes. All you got to do is head on over to patreon.com/bytethat. You pledge, you support the show, and you earn a chance to win yourself a free WWE shop shirt valued at up to $25 for simply supporting BT. Now, my name is Juan Velez. I am from the Shining Star of the Caribbean. I didn't retire the Dudley Boyz or have any real involvement in doing so, but maybe Keith did. He's from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, or Ryan McNulty, who hails from Boston, Massachusetts. Guys, I just have a question. Why is the human body so weird and so weak?
What? Why? Why do you have this question?
Because, okay, we have SummerSlam. You have your WWE Universal Champion, Finn Balor, the Demon King, is human. How funny is that? How has nobody really talked about that? You debut this Demon King, wow, man. He's out for 6 months because, well, the human body's weak, unfortunately.
See, what happens, kayfabe reasons, is that the Demon King was so powerful that Finn Balor's mortal body couldn't contain the Demon King, so his mortal shell was left scarred and injured.
It's like Kaioken in many ways, where you
pretty
really
much
risk your body. Okay.
Like, so really, the Demon King's like a Kaioken times 100, you know?
My God, it makes sense.
It's just super discouraging, though.
It's a real bummer. It's a real bummer.
He was just getting started. He gets the title, has to walk away for 6 months. I mean, that's tough. Especially, just given such a major push to start, and then they just have to drop all of that. He's basically going to have to start over again in 6 months.
Yes, but sometimes time away can be more beneficial than time there. Think about what happened with Seth Rollins and how basically overnight everybody was like, oh, I'm so tired of Seth with the title. He needs to drop the title.
That's such a big difference, though.
Is it though, really?
Yes.
Because even when Finn comes back, he's going to pick up where he left off and then some. I honestly don't think the difference is all that big.
I think it's pretty big only because Finn had only had 4 weeks to get started. Whereas, Rollins had been on the roster for years before the whole injury. It's a lot different when it's this early. I still think Finn will get a great reception when he comes back. I'm just saying it's not going to be, it's not super beneficial. It's not more beneficial than actually just not being hurt,
It's really challenging. Finn Balor just transitioned from NXT to the main roster. We're gonna do our best. It's a packed episode to sort of chronologically go about how things happened. So, last year Finn Balor was Mr. NXT, and it's sort of weird how we have NXT Takeover Brooklyn 2, but then Finn wasn't involved, right? Then we had SummerSlam and all the things. There's the whole controversy of the Universal title. Is it made out of Nakamura's jacket? I don't know. That could be something maybe we delve into and investigate. But I think the big topic or the big question throughout the whole episode is going to be, is the negativity from the majority of the people that are speaking out justified? So with that, we kick it off first with our NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2. It's the sequel. It's the second part of the show. I thought it was a solid show. Dare I say, a bit of a letdown, and I think that although the majority of the crowd seems to side with the fact that NXT TakeOver was better than SummerSlam, we may get some flack for this. I strongly disagree. I think that SummerSlam, it was a lengthy show, and that bit it in the ass. But aside from that, it was a much better show. What do you guys think?
I am completely with you as far as NXT versus SummerSlam. I think NXT was a very solid show. It was a good show, don't get me wrong, but in comparison to the rest of the takeovers, especially recently, I felt like something was missing from this takeover. Basically, it was all right. Like Ciampa, Gargano, and the Revival tore the house down exactly like I expected them to. But every other match just felt kind of hollow to me. Like Bayley and Asuka was cool. The main event, I think they went home early in that main event. I can't confirm that one way or another, but something felt off about the main event to me. And the other matches just kind of were what they were. It was a good show, but it didn't feel like a takeover. Like if you want to compare it to last year's NXT Takeover Brooklyn, I think that it was a step in the wrong direction, a step in a negative direction.
See, it's really tough for me to decide which was the better show. But if I had to just say we're talking show, not match by match, I would have to go with NXT TakeOver. Because to give an example, if there is a 2-hour movie that's, pretty darn good and just solid throughout versus like a really bloated movie that has like 40 minutes of just epicness, but then 2 hours of just like, But
what if the 40 minutes does something better than the entire other 2 hours?
SummerSlam, I think, had higher highs, but it also had much lower lows. Whereas NXT, I felt like, was a very consistently good show throughout that didn't really fall flat at any point for me. Whereas SummerSlam, there were a lot of dips. So if we're talking just looking at the show as a whole, I think NXT TakeOver is just a better overall experience. But there were much higher highs on SummerSlam.
I think there's two sides to this. There's a lot of shows or talent or segments that whenever you're about to consume them, you go in thinking, oh, this is going to be awesome. That's your takeover. You go into it thinking this is going to be an awesome show. Whereas with SummerSlam, people kind of go into it like, WWE, please don't suck. Please don't mess this up. So it's different, right? Because when NXT is a good show, to you, it's great because you already expected good. With SummerSlam, a lot of people, us included, were thinking it's over 4 hours. It's damn near 6 hours. Some of the stuff really didn't need to go as long as it did. So you tend to be more negative.
Yeah,
but
TakeOver will get more slack. Because people like to stay positive with NXT, and I don't think it deserves a ton of flack either. I don't think there's really too much to complain about on the show, but I see what you mean where people are already going in with a negative attitude towards SummerSlam, so they're going to it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're looking for the negatives already.
And that's not to say either show was bad. Because personally, I thought it was a strong wrestling weekend. Exactly. It was great. But if you want to talk quickly about like Revival and Gargano Ciampa, I love both tag teams. That CWC match between Gargano and Ciampa, freaking awesome. Personally, I thought the tag team matches with American Alpha were so much better than this one. And that was a takeover. So at some point, you got to be able to compare. There's been enough takeovers where you can go, okay, if I made a top 10, not all of them can be in the top 5, and that's okay. NXT got rated to hell with talent. You looked at Bayley in the show, it's like, what are you doing here? You kind of feel old compared to everybody else, not in terms of age, but, Bayley's been in there the whole time. And the last thing I want to bring up here is that when you talk about the women's match, yes, the match itself was solid, but there was no emotion behind it. And I don't think that will ever be matched because when you talk about Bayley versus Sasha Banks, that's on a whole nother level more than just the match itself. It was that people believed in that. And I think that, there may be strong disagreements about that, but it was overall good. So that's good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Pretty good.
It's good. Let's get to SummerSlam. So, Ryan, you provided a review on the YouTube channel. Everybody can listen to it right now. It's about 17 minutes. The main point you made is what I sort of brought up earlier. Over 5 hours. I mean, WWE, we've joked. At some point, they are going to have a 24-hour show. They're going to figure out a way. If there's any company in the world that can figure out a 24-hour wrestling show, Vince McMahon is going to freaking pull it off. And we're going to hate ourselves for it. But
yep.
Let me get your overall reactions, Keith, about SummerSlam, including the length. Do you think the length affected however you feel about the show?
So there's kind of two discussions when it comes to my thoughts with SummerSlam, and that's length versus everything else. Like, yes, SummerSlam was long, and it felt long for a while. Especially like after or around Ambrose versus Ziggler, it really started to feel long. That being said, I don't think segment by segment the quality of the show was anything less but good. It was a very solid show. Like, I would say that the worst match on the card was the 6 women divas match, and that was still a pretty good match overall. Like, none of SummerSlam didn't really have a bad match on it. It's just unfortunate that there was so many of them and it felt so long that kind of took away from the overall product. But you know, maybe there's a point to start talking about, or a discussion where maybe we don't have to sit and watch these shows in one sitting, you know? When does it come a point where it's detrimental? Like, yes, this show is long, and yes, it's fun to be a part of the live experience. But if there comes a point where we start hating it, maybe it's time to take a break and maybe watch it tomorrow.
There's definitely a threshold. I think there is a length, there is some sort of science behind this, where there is a certain point in time where you're just going to get diminishing returns on a wrestling show. Like,
Absolutely.
After 3.5 hours, the quality, it doesn't matter how good the wrestling is, the crowd is going to get lost and the quality is going to dip. And I compare this to, like, when I go to an amusement park. I remember, like, many years ago, I went to Six Flags, right? And they had this Superman roller coaster, and it has one of the biggest drops in, like, of any roller coaster out there. So that day I went on that roller coaster, like, probably 5 times, right? So the first couple times, that drop is intense. It's like, especially if it's the first ride you go on at an amusement park, you're like, holy crap. And then by the end of the day, I was like no-selling that roller coaster, right? You're so used to that feeling.
You got to work it.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like it's like that roller coaster, you know. It doesn't matter how good Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor is. You know, they were kind of lost by that point because they had already seen John Cena versus AJ Styles tear the house down, and they were so worn out from that they started to just kind of go into like memes and stuff and just start chanting about the belt because that was something different. You know what I mean? They were there since like 5 p.m. Eventually, they're just going to start caring about stupid stuff just because it's, like, different.
Yeah, it's like on our Instagram, Byte That, I experimented by just providing, like, quick 1-minute reviews. And at one point I said, okay, so 2 of my favorite movies of all time are Goodfellas and Cinema Paradiso. Goodfellas is not a short movie, right? It is an investment. Cinema Paradiso, there's a director's cut that's over 3 hours. It is a 4-hour movie. It's one of my favorite of all time. Now, Ryan, if you came over, first of all, I mean, that'd be awesome because, like, you're in Boston, and Keith, you too. But as much as I love the movie, I would go, okay, in terms of priorities, I know I love this movie. When I watch it, I know what I'm getting myself into. I can't devote the 4 hours to it, right? Like, maybe I'll watch the first hour, the 2 hours, but then I'll think, I know how the movie ends, whatever. And with wrestling or any kind of entertainment form, that is good. You know, like, it's fine to be burnt out. So, like, with you, what you said, Keith, where maybe, like, if you're watching at home and if you're just sitting down and only watching it and you don't have, like, a crowd, you know, you're not, like, hanging out, eating with friends, maybe that's a little bit too much for you. If you're in the live audience, I think that's different because we've talked about when we've gone to WrestleMania where I thought, like at my first WrestleMania with Keith, that, man, that energy is never going to go down. And there was a Hell in a Cell match in front of us that I couldn't cheer for the life of me because my body just can't handle it.
It is true. And I mean, it is an interesting discussion. Like, being in the live crowd, yes, you're there for the whole time. That's your price of admission. But as a consumer at home that is not at the Barclays Center for SummerSlam, why do we feel compelled to sit there and watch it the whole time?
Because it's live and you want the live experience. It's just like a sports game, right? If you
but like, why is my question?
Because it's part of the experience and you also don't want to get spoiled and stuff. You know what I mean? If the Patriots are on, I never tape a sports game to watch it later, and wrestling's mimicking sports in that way. And obviously it's a lot better to, I think wrestling, watching it after the fact is much better than any other sport. But still, it's that live thing. You can't go on Twitter until you've seen it, so unless you're going to get spoiled or whatever. The thing is, though, that live crowd getting tired actually does directly affect the audience in a lot of ways. When the crowd stops caring about Dean Ambrose versus Dolph Ziggler, subconsciously and consciously, I'm starting to lose interest too. Because a lot of times you kind of just associate that quiet crowd with a bad match. So even if the match isn't bad, you know what I mean? Just like trying to do a match. That is true. If someone did a match in an empty arena, it just wouldn't, even if it's the greatest match ever, it just wouldn't feel the same.
Like, say, The Rock versus Mankind.
Yeah.
Worst match ever, but it's basic psychology. If the three of us are watching a movie, the three of us are watching it at the same time for the first time ever, but I like it, but then Ryan says this movie sucks and Keith says like it's not that great, a part of my brain will question whether I'm actually enjoying it or if you guys saying that will somehow change how I feel. And more so than reviewing SummerSlam, I think you can make a case of reviewing the crowd on a match-by-match basis. Because I think that, we've set out the polls, and they were generally not that great. We're going to get to the Raw one a little bit later. But take a match like Ambrose versus Dolph Ziggler. I don't get the hate for it. I seriously don't. I saw two guys having a good match that crowd didn't care about. I mean, they were doing false finishes. They did the dirty deeds after like the fake out in the corner. They did the zigzag where for a second I thought that he may actually win. It was an enjoyable match, but then I enjoyed it, right? Like I kept myself out of social media, but I go online and I just see like, oh man, Dean Ambrose can't have a great match. And I'm just thinking like, did I watch a different SummerSlam than everybody else? But then I think to myself, what took me out of that match so many times? And it was that damn crowd, because it felt like everybody was in the bathroom taking a dump, or they were on their phone, or they were doing something that wasn't actually watching the match you paid to see.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with placement too. Like, I thought it was a fine match. There are obviously better matches on the show, but that's supposed to be the biggest title in the company, right? The WWE Championship. And when it's kind of stuck in the middle of the show and it already doesn't feel like the most important match on the card, there's just a lot of contributing factors all kind of molding into one thing. I mean, Ambrose is a good wrestler. I've always thought, everything aside from just the moves themselves, how he plays out the match, I think is great. It's just, I have a bone to pick with a few of the moves that he does, really. But other than that,
mean like
I think
that rebound clothesline?
Yes, the rebound clothesline. I mean, some of the stuff is a little goofy, but in between all those moves, I think everything else is fine. And exactly. I really think there's just more factors going into this than the actual wrestling that was going on in the match.
Which is unfortunate, the fact that there's so much like credit in the crowd and the atmosphere that if for whatever reason it can take away from the match that much. Because I'm with Juan on this one, where I thought it was a fine match on its own, but it did kind of feel lessened because everybody was fatigued. Everybody in the arena wasn't really into it. Probably because, like, really, even though it was a title match, it was a cool down match from where it was placed in the card, which is unfortunate itself. But yeah,
I think there's also another conversation where, WWE did take a huge gamble by putting Ziggler in the spot, and although they've really tried, I mean, they tried as far as, like, Dean Ambrose was a bad guy. He was a heel during this whole match, like, mimicking Dolph Ziggler to try to get the crowd going, and I applaud them for that. That's a huge risk. That's your champion who did retain, and then afterwards he was like, yeah, I was kind of a dick to him. But even then, the crowd just was not caring about Ziggler. When you have a zigzag and you may be winning, there's a fake out, right? And people aren't going like, oh my God, he kicked out. They were just watching the match. It's really, really difficult. Now,
that is true, because basically everybody in the world but Ryan thought that Ambrose was probably going to retain. So maybe people just wrote that off from the very beginning.
Well,
and like, okay, let's just go through the emotions. About
that freaking Colonel Sanders KFC commercial, I would have changed my prediction in a heartbeat, because there's no way in hell that they would have had Ziggler doing that damn commercial if he was going to be champion. That's for sure.
I strongly believe that has something to do with it. Or, man, come on now. Oh, that's cool. They actually got a live crowd involved in a KFC commercial. But let's go back for a second.
How did that stay under wraps? That's the part that I'm amazed
No,
with.
there were pictures.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that happened on last week's show. So, I mean, it's cool. It's cool.
I was just listening to Steve Austin's podcast, and he's going through it with Wade Keller. And just one thing, when he's talking about the commercial, they don't talk about it live, but he just said, Colonel Sanders goes over on the chicken. And I just had to laugh.
Oh, he didn't work on the chicken wing enough. But
yeah.
Let's talk quickly about the women's match. There's different parts to this, right? So Sasha's out. Let's get that out of the way. She's injured, will not require surgery. There was this long-standing rumor that she may be suspended because she was conveniently going to be out for about 33 days as of SummerSlam. So naturally, given what happened with Eva Marie, which they handled that exceptionally well with Nikki Bella returning, we can get to that at a future point here. But I feel like this is a very good match, a very solid match. But the common theme in Sasha Banks' matches seems to be, can she survive? Can she actually go without breaking her neck or something? Dare I say the back injury that she has right now can be contributed to those suicide dives that she's been going through, where we're thinking, okay, Sasha, you don't, it's not literally a suicide dive. It's just a name for a move, right?
I mean, when you have other wrestlers tweeting you on social media like, Jesus, I thought you were going to die during this move. Maybe it's time to be a little more careful in the ring. But yeah, it was a very solid match. It almost felt like some unnecessary risks happened there. And maybe this is the unpopular opinion, but I really liked the finish to that match. The fact it just came completely out of nowhere. It wasn't very it wasn't very telegraphed, and boom, it was over, title changed. It was really nice.
Yeah, see, I must be weird compared to a lot of people with this match, because a lot of people were talking about how sloppy it was. And of course, yes, there were two scary spots that I can think of right now that I thought were just a terrible, terrible idea. But otherwise, I thought this match was very solid. And then yet, I was the one calling the AJ Jericho match really sloppy, and everyone else thought that was amazing. So apparently I'm just way off the radar.
I don't think you're that off with this one. Like, it was a very solid match, and the only times it was sloppy were in those few situations where it looked like Sasha was going to die. Like, everything else looked fine.
I still don't get what that corner move was supposed to be. Was she just supposed to sidewalk slam her down, or maybe do a Roderick Strong backbreaker? But that was so freaking dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to put I don't know, I don't want to put anything on anyone for whose fault or whatever, but both that spot in the corner, which looked like it was going to be some sidewalk slam or whatever, and then the Razor's Edge into the Hurricane Rana were both
oh my God.
Just terrible, terrible ideas. And I hate when part of my focus on the match is this person gonna live through this match? Because they she almost broke her neck twice in that match, and I don't know why she's taking those kinds of risks. I know the women, they want to outdo the guys and stuff, but clearly this isn't the way. There's smarter ways to have a great match without having to take these types of risks. There's a reason you don't see guys do that type of move either, because it's really not safe. And yeah, I'm glad Sasha's taking some time off. She knew if she was going in knowing she was taking time off, why is she trying to take more time off? I don't get it. Because
get an extra week.
that was really, really scary stuff, and she doesn't need to be doing that because they can get over just fine without any of that.
The thing I will say about that is that I get it, and we may get some comments about this. We're a podcast, so naturally we're gonna overanalyze these things. We're worried about Sasha's health throughout the match. Watch that match again and listen to the crowd as the match happens, and the same spots that we're talking about, the live crowd also reacts. The crowd becomes more silent and more silent because they're thinking what we're thinking. Is Sasha injured? Turns out she actually does have some back injuries. Thankfully, it would not require surgery, and we're going to get to the Bayley thing, which is freaking awesome. I'm not sure if that happened because of this or not, but the fact of the matter is that it is what it is, right? And with that, we got to talk about, because apparently who cares about Finn Balor versus Rollins? Because the moment they revealed that new championship, even the live crowd was just like, man, you two were having a match and thing, but that title, like Nakamura's jacket was beautiful, and WWE like transformed it into something that it's not. Can I get some quick comments about the Universal Championship? It is uninspiring. Like I think nobody can make an argument as to why it's not uninspiring. It is the same championship, just a color swap. It's like an NES game. They're taking advantage of the limited memory.
You know, the Universal Championship is a tough pill to swallow. I get with what the idea they're going with. It's the same way in like the UFC, how all the titles basically look the same. It puts them on the same level. They're equally as prestigious as everything else. I get the idea. The execution with the Universal title, maybe it's a little too red. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think it's that bad. Do I think it's amazing? No, but I think we were all a little iffy on the current WWE's title design way back when The Rock revealed that. So we'll get used to it, and it won't even be a second thought.
For sure. If we could get used to the pennies, sorry to cut you off there. If we could get used to the tag team title pennies, we can get used to anything.
Yeah, exactly. And to look at it this way, it has such a dumb friggin' name, right? The Universal title. They needed to go with a safe look if it was gonna have a dumb name. And if they tried something extravagant, one title's always gonna look better than the other one. If you have it look the same, there's very little controversy. It makes them seem like equal playing field, like you said. And then I brought up in the review, I know Smackdown, they're revealing 2 new titles tonight. So the women's title for Smackdown, that could look the same. So we could have 4 titles all looking the same. So it's pretty crazy.
I just remember seeing a picture on Instagram of Finn Balor and Charlotte. They were at some morning show, and then a lot of the comments, and understandably so, because it's like a faraway picture. They both had their championships, and there's a good part of this where people were like, is Finn holding Charlotte's title or the other way around? Or are they holding the actual, their proper championship? But there's something, this is wrestling. This is not UFC. If it's sports entertainment, even that championship, like the hardcore title had freaking duct tape on it, and people loved it because it's part of the spectacle. But then if part of the spectacle is just, we're just going to make all of these things the same because everybody's on the same level. No, they're not. They get paid different. There's a lower, mid, and upper card for a reason, and there are different stats in wrestling games. There can be many arguments as to like how that UFC argument, although it makes sense for them, doesn't really make sense for wrestling. Now we could bring up the Balor Rollins match more, but I think the premise is the same with the crowd interaction really happening there, and there's a plane going by. Even the plane's like talking about SummerSlam right now, but we got to get to this main event between Lesnar and Orton. I believe I did call out the fact that this was going to main event the show. So I was right on that. I'm not sure if that was the best call or not.
Kudos.
Thank you. Now, the first...
I also said it would main event, but whatever.
Well, I already took the credit, Keith. Okay, Keith and I share the credit. We're going to fist bump virtually.
I was wrong about everything. Yay.
Yay.
It's okay, but... I think the first 5 minutes, 5, 6, 7 minutes of this was great. Now, I think that it's always going to be the argument. How much of that was planned afterwards? Dave Meltzer, people are saying, oh, that was completely planned. Regardless, I'm not sure how that was a cool ending or a fun ending or even just a normal good ending to a pay-per-view where they just have Randy bleed. It ends the show. And then that's it. That's it. After over 5 hours.
It's tough to feel let down from this match because I wasn't going into it with the greatest expectations anyway. But yeah, it was weird how it ended. And if they planned for that cut, like if that was a blade job, I'm still not 100% sure if that was Brock's legitimate elbow busting or
that was an elbow.
The fact that you would plan doing that to yourself is kind of insane in my eyes. That's a lot of blood to lose for a planned idea.
I don't think they planned to have Randy lose that much blood because that was insane. And I get it. because there's been comments about this. This was a normal part of wrestling. It's not a normal part of WWE now. So understandably, people, ourselves included, are going to be a little bit surprised because this is so un-WWE.
I think the plan with this was to I don't know if like Brock and Orton were just doing their own thing, like off the books, like, hey, let's get some blood in this, and Brock was just going to bust him open, but he accidentally went too far. My thanks to Brock for ending the show only just after 11 by busting Orton open, so thank you for that, so we didn't have to go 20 minutes over on an already very long show. I loved this match. Yes, it ended very abruptly, but I was loving every second up to it. It actually exceeded my expectations and only just really kind of ended just a little too soon. It left me wanting more, and it's kind of a shame that we probably won't see a rematch of this. But now there's a possibility that Shane McMahon could be taking on Brock.
Which is weird, because that seems like an execution more than a match.
It's a Shane McMahon match, though.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, he can take on The Undertaker in a Hell in a Cell. Why not Brock Lesnar? But I would be able to get behind the fact that the whole TKO idea was the planned part, and then maybe something went wrong, and then that's how they ended up getting there just a little bit earlier than planned. But yeah, overall, good match.
Yeah, because let's think about this, right? If it was going to be a legit TKO finish, after he just started like wailing on him, they probably would have just called the TKO right away. But they actually got the doctors in there to try and see if they could like, you know, patch him up or whatever so that they could continue. Like there was like a very long kind of pause before they finally called the TKO. So
and the way that Brock like just let off with his punches as well, where he's like, he hits that one and then he's like, oh, I'm going to hit everywhere else now.
yeah, exactly. Something tells me that the match was supposed to go on a little bit longer, but then they had to call it off when they did.
Quick question. Generally speaking, is Brock fun for you to watch in WWE right now?
Yeah. I still enjoy every time he shows up.
Yeah, definitely. It is, his matches are, like, they would, if this was an every pay-per-view thing, then Brock would get old really fast, but they spaced it out enough that it's always interesting. I mean, he wrestles, like 4 matches a year, and sure, they have some similarities, but I think the intensity that he has is pretty unmatched.
To play both sides of it, I would say that the German suplex thing is getting old, but overall, I still enjoy Brock Lesnar as a whole. But I'm also the person with like the biggest man crush on Brock Lesnar on this planet. So take that for or as you will.
I don't know why I just picture you like sitting on Brock Lesnar's lap right now. I don't know why. It's kind of creepy, Keith, but
that is a little weird.
It is weird. So Brock Lesnar, folks. He's a thing, and we got to move on to Raw. Like, over 30 minutes, and we haven't even gotten to the main show we're going to talk about. So, of course, we always ask you on social media, Byte That Cast on Twitter, to let us know what you thought about it. We reworded the poll a little bit this week because of everything that happened, and with the patented out of 4 rating scale, we had 7%. Which matches another thing, saying it was a bad show. Not good, just bad. 49%, the majority, gave it a 2 out of 4, said a very standard episode of Raw. 37% said it was a good post-pay-per-view show. And then 7%, matching the bad, said it was great. So we're getting like opposite spectrums, or the minimum.
We get a nice like little bell curve going on.
Yeah, really.
So it's very cohesive there in the middle. I do think that, you know, you got to have this conversation of how much rewriting did WWE have to do. If you look at this Raw, the whole thing was based on, you know, who's going to be the new champion, which feels like once a year they got to do this because people just get injured. When Dean and Bryan lost the IC title with the WWE Championship, it's part of the nature of the beast. So did you think that this Raw was enjoyable, knowing that a lot of this was probably not happened or planned, I should say, the night before?
You just gave me the mental image of like somewhere they take in a glass box from show to show this red box that says like in case of emergency or injury.
Deleted.
or break glass, and they've got this backup script that they can go to in case somebody gets injured. But yeah, overall, I thought Raw was a good post pay-per-view show. I mean, you could feel a little bit of the panic mode, like, oh, we need a new plan because our new champion is injured. And that's what most of the show revolved around. But with that, we got some good matches out of it, some interesting developments, and yeah, overall good show.
Yeah, Raw was good because there was enough going on to make it seem like an important show. I think it was heavily assisted by the fact that Finn Balor, because he had to relinquish the title, they had to scramble to crown a new champion. So we had all these basically number one contenders matches. So anytime there's a number one contenders match, like, you're invested, at least you are if you like the guys involved. And I think there were quite a few names to like here. So the fact that there was so much surrounding how we're going to crown the new champion, it kept me invested throughout the show.
And how challenging must that be for Finn Balor, psychologically speaking? You just moved up from NXT. They're taking a ridiculous gamble on you, right? Like, man, you're going to put on the face paint. You may become like the number one baby face of the company. Yeah, you're kind of out 6 months, and you just became the first Universal Champion. And you're going to open up the show and relinquish the title. And that may be it for a while, right? So how did you feel? Because this is, once again, not the first time. It feels like this is happening way more as the years go by with D-Bry, with Seth Rollins, with so many people, and now Finn Balor's added to that list. We sort of brought this up at the top of the show. Do you think this is in some kind of way, taking it directly first to Keith, some kind of blessing? You were talking about that at the beginning. Want to get some more feedback about that?
I don't know, the more I think about it, I don't know if blessing is the right word, but it definitely won't be a detriment to Finn at the end of the day. It's the same way that we talk about, like, history won't remember how Roman Reigns is a 3-time champion. History will remember that Roman Reigns is a 3-time champion. The same way that Finn will always be the first Universal Champion. And when he comes back, it'll be exactly where Finn left off. I have no doubts about that at all. Does it suck that it happened right now when Finn had all the momentum in the world? Absolutely, and it's unfortunate because I really wanted to see what Finn would do on the main roster, but it's just a matter of now I just have to wait a little bit longer for that because I have no doubt that the grand scheme hasn't changed at all. And as far as the injury goes, it makes me really wonder if all of these new injuries, all of these, like, how it's happening more frequently, like you said, Juan, is really like a side effect of this new style that like all the NXT wrestlers are doing, all of this new era, these new era wrestlers are doing, where it's more fast paced, they take more risks and stuff. And are these injuries, can you directly relate these more frequent injuries to that new style? And unfortunately, I think the answer more and more is yes.
And it's crazy. Yeah.
Stop doing suicide dives.
Or in this case, the power bomb, because it's 2 times now with Seth Rollins. He's got to be feeling terrible because he kind of retired Sting. Yes, it was a freak accident.
that is true. That move's injured 2 people now.
Yeah, seriously. Maybe it's time to look at that over something like the curb stomp, but I know that was banned for different reasons.
Apparently he just can't wrestle. Like, just go in the ring and punch. You're the new Stone Cold.
As far as Finn Balor, though, part of me is just so sad about this for a different reason than just the fact that it was Finn Balor, but because this was such a unique push for someone. A guy just comes up from NXT, gets a shot at the new world title, and wins it. And I was so curious to see, like, is this going to work? This super aggressive way of pushing somebody? Like, was Finn going to be able to, like, run with this and become this mega star? And we're going to never know if that works, because when, everything's going to be changed in 6 months, and who knows what they're going to do with him. I feel like they're not going to rush him back to the title right away. They could, but it literally changes everything. And like I said, the circumstances were just so unique, and I was so curious to see how it was going to play out. And it's just so unfortunate we're not going to know.
I think we'll still have a pretty good idea when Finn gets back, though, depending on how much momentum Finn still has in that short amount of time, because they gave him the world, and I think just because he's going away for a bit doesn't mean that any of that momentum is going to go with him. So I still think you can consider it a success in the way that he will still be on top.
So with Finn Balor being out of action, WWE decided to have the series of matches. I won't say a tournament because it already ends next week, where out of this we got a fatal four-way consisting of Roman Reigns, Big Cass, Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, and this is for the championship. So next Monday we are going to get the new champion with the mix. So we have Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens as the bad guys. We have Big Cass as the good guy. Roman Reigns as the guy. Who's going to win?
Well played, man. Well played.
So who's going to win?
Roman
Prediction games right now.
Reigns is going to be the champion. I think they're going to give it back to Roman Reigns, and I can't wait for all the hatred to pour in.
I think it's going to be Seth Rollins. It has to be Seth Rollins, right?
Okay, so Ryan was the crazy guy last week, and I think a lot of people are already going like, no.
Big Cass, right?
How? Okay.
I wish I could say that non-jokingly. I really do.
Okay, but here's my mindset. I think WWE wants to challenge themselves by having a good guy represent like a baby face. Like not just like a good guy, but a baby face run the place. Like be the face. With Big Cass, you're accompanied by Enzo Amore. That can go a long way for a guy that we've said Enzo would make an excellent manager. We've said, like, these two guys don't even need to be a tag team. Here's an actual opportunity
to admit that this is way more ridiculous than me picking Ziggler.
Yes, it absolutely is.
Oh, come on, though.
It is way more.
Okay, but could you see it happen? Like,
no.
The pieces are in place.
I actually can't. How are they in place? Explain to me how they are in place.
Enzo and Cass, I mean, let's be honest, more Enzo than Cass, is one of the most over guys right now in the company. Okay. And I don't think he's going to be tag team champion. His win-loss record speaks for itself because he's not meant to be the guy that wins. So what do? You put that talent, that vocal talent, to good use. You have him be the hype guy for Big Cass. And I'm not saying this is going to be a lengthy title reign. I'm just saying this is what I'm talking about here. Seth Rollins is going to be the champion a month from now. That, I don't doubt it. But I think it's way more, and I hate to use so many terms here, but there's more heat, quote unquote, to be applied to Rollins by having him beat that one good guy directly in a match rather than just here's four guys and then like, oh, Rollins wins. But then what? But with Cass being in there, you're able to test the waters. You're able to keep Rollins as the bad guy. It's insane. It's ridiculous. But I'm sticking to it.
Have you been smoking that stuff Keith's been giving you? What's going on?
Yeah, really? Like, it doesn't even affect me that much. Jesus.
I've been hanging out with Moon, drinking coffee. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
It could be the DDP yoga.
Okay. Here's where you're wrong. It's just not going to happen. No.
From the Dolph Ziggler guy.
See, I know, right? All my credibility's lost. So what does anything even mean anymore, really? I mean, the universe, I don't understand it. Kevin Owens is in this match, and Kevin Owens and Big Cass are in that tag feud together. I feel like that's the perfect opportunity for that feud to continue, and then they're going to get pulled out of the equation, and then you're down to Rollins and Roman Reigns, I'm sorry. But Rusev could also get involved, considering that feud didn't really end, and I feel like they're just like, hey, can you guys forget about that? But that could play a factor, and maybe that's how Seth Rollins does end up winning. I still just have a gut feeling that they wanted a babyface champion, so that's why they're going to go back to Roman Reigns.
No, that's going to be Big Cass.
Yeah, Big Cass is a stretch. I think giving him the title now would be a huge detriment to him.
I agree completely.
Because I think Big Cass could be a legit main eventer. But if you put the title on him too soon, I feel like that's going to like overexpose him, and like he's getting really good, and I feel like just throwing the title on him is going to put way too much of a spotlight on him. People are going to see all his weaknesses just like they did with Roman Reigns, and they're going to rip him to shreds. When if you just bide your time and make people want it, make people really want it, then it's a whole different story. I mean, think about Daniel Bryan winning the title versus Roman Reigns winning the title. People were begging for it by the time they finally gave it to them.
So they're begging for Roman Reigns to win the title?
No, Roman Reigns is a whole different situation.
That wasn't what he was saying at all. He's saying,
he did mention
Roman Reigns
once.
as when they just kind of gave him the title before people wanted him to have it, as opposed to Daniel Bryan. I mean, sure, Daniel Bryan's situation is unique in a lot of ways, but I think the same rule applies where you want them to want it before you give it to them.
Exactly. And I mean, let's talk real here for a minute. Before the WWE draft happened, and even after it, we said that the title picture for Raw is most likely going to be Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns for a very long time. And the fact that the third guy that they were going to put into that equation just recently got hurt, it's probably just going to go back to the normal plan of Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns at the top of the card.
I'm still thinking it's a big cast, but let's move on. We got more stuff to talk about. But before we get to Bayley and the Dudleys, we got to get to a couple of announcements, and one of them is regarding the Patreon. Now, Ryan's going to be giving some shout-outs here, but before he does that, we have a question for those listening. You know, we are looking for different ways to get you guys more interested in getting some of that early access for some of the things. And we have gotten questions about, okay, you guys do videos on YouTube. When are you putting that? So, although there are certain things that we can't do at the current moment, one alternative for early access for audio listeners could be that we upload to on SoundCloud.com. You know, SoundCloud does have an app, so then you can get that directly through Patreon and everything. You can listen to it there. So if you guys think early access SoundCloud for audio listeners, right now is a good alternative, simply send us a tweet, comment, email.
This would be, just to comment on this, this would be for our YouTube videos, such as, 5 great returns and things like that, because we can't give the podcast any earlier than we do now. So there's
exactly.
Yeah, there's no early access for the podcast because it's up as early as possible.
So it's very important pointing that out.
Yes. So it's for our additional content. This week, for our Patreon supporters, we would like to thank Tony Meyer and Derek Wilson. So once again, thank you guys for supporting us. And as Juan said, you can go over to patreon.com/Byte That and see all the details and rewards you can get for supporting us, including getting entered into our WWE t-shirt giveaway.
And some cool things up on the channel right now. We have early access and coming out this Friday in SRT about should WWE bring back old pay-per-views. So we talk about In Your House. We compare with the NXT Takeovers, talk about King of the Ring, Elimination Chamber. And just last week, we unleashed a video where I was playing, and Keith and Ryan were joining me, Power Move Pro Wrestling for PS1. Every now and then, we like to just play some wrestling games, talk about them, get context, feel old because time is going by. So you can check that out on the channel right now. Before we get to listener questions, we got to bring up 2 more things that happened on Raw. Number 1, Bayley. So Bayley is now directly part of the main roster, thankfully, because honestly, after losing to Asuka, I just don't know what she really had left to do at NXT. So thankfully, this happened. Question number 1, do you think this happened because of Sasha, or was it like planned out all along? Number 2, how do you feel about it?
I don't think it was planned, at least in this exact way. I think she was coming up, though. And because Sasha is out with an injury, I think Bayley kind of got inserted into the women's title scene. I have a pretty strong feeling that, like you said, Bayley didn't really have much left to do in NXT. So I think a roster call-up was inevitable, especially because she was at a previous pay-per-view. They were really kind of teasing that she was going to get called up. So Yes, and definitely Raw seems like the right choice, especially now that they just added Nikki Bella to SmackDown and Sasha's out. They absolutely need some top contenders on Raw, so it's really cool to see Bayley finally make it to the main roster. I mean, she had to have been down there longer than almost anyone before getting called up. She's really been down there since, like, the way beginning.
She was training other female wrestlers, so that goes. You've been in development long enough to where like you're helping put a show together.
She was on NXT when AJ Lee was still champion. Think about that one for a second. But yeah, you could kind of see Bayley's call up coming a mile away, especially after NXT Takeover, where they kind of had that "thank you, Bayley" moment. Now, the fact that it happened this soon might be related to Sasha, and I don't think it was initially planned this way, but it certainly helped with the situation that was presented. And honestly, I'm very curious about how Bayley's going to like unfold in the like grand WWE scale, and like that whole charm of Bayley in NXT. Is that going to carry over to the WWE product on that much larger scale? And I'm very interested to see if it actually does or not.
It was smart to start out with Brooklyn because that crowd was going to love her no matter what. I think, though, the NXT watchers are having more and more of an influence over WWE crowds, even outside of the major cities. So I think a good chunk of the crowd is already going to be accepting her. It's a very different women's gimmick for what we're used to on the main roster, because very much a lot of times the women are kind of sexualized in some way and are, they're either, or like they're bitchy or something like that. And Bayley is like just the very
feels good man. Like, just the biggest feels good man.
A happy girl that just wants to hug people. And normally that's a gimmick that everyone would shit all over, but it just works here.
Exactly. It goes directly to who she is, right? And everybody's seen her enough in NXT where at the beginning they hated the character. They were like, is she like Eugene? Because at first she was like really overdoing it. And then she was able to actually tone it down. And then even now, if you really think about it, her character is just not like this happy-go-lucky, like, hey, I'm here. It's like, I'm a fan just like you, except I'm now wrestling. I'm now part of all this. So I think it's soft enough, it's mainstream enough to where it can work. And even, we may not have Balor right now as an experiment of like, you're just being shut up to the main roster. But here's Bayley, the person that everybody's saying she's never going to make it to the main roster. She's going to fail. She doesn't have the traditional look. As you mentioned, she's not open to being sexualized as much as the other female superstars are. But if all of this works, it opens up a ton of options. So I'm super excited about this. And you guys talked about, the crowd, right? Like how the live crowd was reacting to this. And they were aware. The NXT crowd's having an influence. I think people tend to misunderestimate how much people in the live audiences, I know this is Brooklyn, but how much they're aware of things that are happening. Case in point, Dudley Boyz. So they're actually gone. Like that was not a storyline.
That's so
although
crazy.
It was a little weird how they did that. They got beaten down. Might as well do some honors before you leave. But then at one point where they bring up ENC and the Hardy Boys, a huge deleted chant breaks out. Arena-wide deleted chant. So here we go. Something that is happening now. Like not a Hardy Boys chant, not a Jeff Hardy chant, a deleted chant. A very specific chant. So people that consume WWE, like they know what's happening with Broken Matt and Broken Nero.
Well, that's
and
Brooklyn.
Broken stuff.
That is Brooklyn. The delete chant is not going to happen in many other places, at least that loud of a chant. The Dudley Boyz, though, it's so weird. I think it came down to like contract negotiations, because it seems so weird that the Dudley Boyz are just leaving. There's no build up to like a final match.
They were doing so good, Ryan. It was such a good run.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame them for wanting to leave. They should have been treated a lot better for, the veteran team that they are. But yeah, because it just seems so weird. It's like, oh, we're going to do this segment. And like you said, they did kind of do the honors for the club, let them get the beat down or whatever. And yeah, they're just gone. There's no match.
Let's make this challenging. Keith and then Ryan. Name your favorite moment of this Dudley Boyz run.
When they put somebody through a table and it was probably cool. Who that is, I don't know. But, I would, like, in the Dudley Boyz' defense, I would say the first part of their run was really good, back when there was actual hope that it could be something special. Like, how crazy is it to go back and think that the Dudley Boyz never got that 10th tag team title win? That seems so crazy to me.
They were, like, building up to that, and then it never happened. They did some stuff with the New Day, right? Right?
Yeah, they did do that. I think it was just a challenge.
You know what? The Dudley Boyz versus Enzo and Cass. That was pretty good.
That was good as well.
That was probably the best thing about it. I just think that WWE sort of wanted to get them on the train because they had experience, not necessarily they knew what to do with them. Because if you saw, like, they came out as good guys first, but then they became, heels. But then they had like this moment where they were baby faces again for no reason, but then they were once again heel and then face for 1 week. Like, it seems like Big Show took a break.
They were all about no tables, and then like they just brought out the tables.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, they honestly went on a week-to-week basis, except in this case, it's really, really bad when you do something like that because you lose credibility. You feel like you're just part of that roster, and like, hey, we need some old guys to put new guys over, so let's do that, right? Like, we had Sami Zayn and Neville versus Dudley Boyz, and that was their last match. It was a SummerSlam pre-show. Really, really weird match, but do you guys see the Dudley Boyz going to TNA or maybe even Lucha Underground at some point, which seems to be like, that could be an amazing... I just said that right now, and damn, that could work.
If
Bubba
they
Ray.
go back, like, if they completely erase the WWE run and just pick up where they left off pre-WWE, especially from Bubba Ray, from Bully Ray.
Well, he's got
I'd
about
love to
50
see
pounds to lose since Bully Ray.
Yeah, but if something like that happens, then sure, it'll be great.
I feel like they should stay on good terms with WWE. They want to get that Hall of Fame spot, and I don't know how much more they really have left to offer. I mean, maybe more so with Bubba Ray, definitely, but I feel like they'll work some indie shows and stuff. I don't really see them making another big run though. And I think they'll stay with good graces with WWE, get the whole Hall of Fame thing. They can always do training people at the Performance Center. Like, if you stay in good graces, WWE takes care of you.
Yeah, we don't really know as fans just how much of this Dudley Boyz run was happened backstage. Like, maybe it was more they helped these new teams out backstage, helped them learn, and maybe that's more of an approach that they'll actually take. Like, yeah, maybe it wasn't that special on screen, but maybe all the magic happened behind the scenes. We don't know that.
That could be the reason why we get a lot of guys like Chris Jericho, who's having one of his best runs. But then whenever you hear about them, like when he had the match with Fandango, which is kind of infamous, but then he was like telling Fandango, like, wait it out. And you see different things like pulling Charlotte so they can soak in the crowd, like the audience reacting to what they're saying. There's a huge element of bringing in these veterans to really contribute to, the young up-and-comers, the people that we're going to grow with now, technically. So, Dudley Boyz, we may see you elsewhere or maybe next year at the Hall of Fame.
So, there's something we need to address on the show here quickly. Ryan just left for a moment because there's a Snorlax outside, and he felt the need to go catch it. So we're going to move on without him.
Exactly. Just want to point out. So we're thinking, because he raised his hand, we're thinking, damn, like a family situation happened. He's looking super serious.
It's a Snorlax.
So Keith, there's a switch here. You were sort of the heel of the podcast. We did the blame Keith movement. The podcast almost ended because rather than talking to us, He wanted to catch a
Talking
freaking
to all
Snorlax?
of you in podcast land.
Yeah, what the
he
hell,
wanted
man?
to go catch a Snorlax. Now that is professionalism at its finest, folks.
Yeah, just to clarify, he doesn't even know we're recording, so when he comes back, we're just going to have this flow live. Hopefully there's no cursing involved, but we're going to do our best, but I can't even believe this actually happened right now.
Oh my god.
Okay, so gang, if you're still listening, you can send us your questions every week on Twitter, Byte That Cast, by using the hashtag AskBT. You can send an email. I'm just waiting because we record on Skype. I'm waiting for Ryan to come in running okay, guys, okay, I got it.
I got my Snorlax.
He better
Yay.
catch that freaking Snorlax. If he comes
if he
back,
doesn't, there's hell to pay.
everybody call his ass out.
Indeed.
On this thing. But yeah, you can send him an email, bytethatcast@gmail.com. Or I think he's coming back. If you're listening on YouTube, simply drop a comment. So Keith, take it away with the questions.
All right. So yes, once again, thank you for all of the great questions. We'll get to them right now. So our first one comes in from Ahmed F, who asks, what is your most embarrassing moment as a wrestling fan? So I'm going to jump ahead here and say my most embarrassing moment in wrestling in general is when my co-host decided that a Snorlax was more important than a podcast.
Priorities, guys. Priorities.
Did you catch the Snorlax?
I did catch him.
What was his CP?
Only
He's looking.
1,393, but I need the candies, man.
Breathe. You need to up your cardio game, because if you got tired catching a Snorlax, that says a lot about you.
I get stairs to run down, dude. I get stairs.
Boo-hoo, man. You stop.
So your most embarrassing moment as a wrestling fan. What is
most embarrassing moment as a wrestling fan?
I got a pretty good one. I don't know if you want me to go well. Okay, so I've always dreamt of having a platform where I can talk about wrestling because, I tend to overanalyze it. So this was in high school. I was talking to one of my teachers who was not a big fan of wrestling. So she was trying to make the argument with me as to why I enjoyed wrestling or who's my favorite wrestler. And keep in mind, I'm saying this without really realizing just how wrong it sounds. They started talking about, I enjoy wrestling, but it's not just about the matches. It's about how people look, how they dress. This guy wears, this type of clothing. So, this storyline happens. And, it doesn't sound as wrong in English, but in Spanish, it basically sounds like I'm just, checking the guys out and, the girls out. And, that's all I'm doing in wrestling. In translation. And then I see the look on her face. She is absolutely traumatized at the fact that she asked this question, but I'm going in deep. And by the time I realized this, I just shut my mouth and I just go this sounded weird, didn't it? She's like, I can't say the first word, but it was a curse word in high school. And she was like, yes, that didn't help. So my teacher looking down on me because I like sweaty men and women, according to what I was saying.
Have a very similar story.
You're like that jobber guy.
Pretty much. So I have a very similar story to that where I almost got suspended, me and a group of friends talking about wrestling in elementary school. It was right in 2000, 2001. We were talking about Lita and Trish Stratus and how big a certain part of their body part was, or how big a certain body part was. And our teacher overheard us and deep in the middle of that conversation just butt in, ripped us apart, and I almost got suspended for it. So that's my story.
I have my story, and unfortunately / fortunately, all of you can witness it. But way back when I started to do this little wrestling league called CWE, and it's sort of the very early precursor to Fight Night. And I did commentary with Juan on this particular match. That was, what was it? It was Woody versus Spawn or something? Yeah. So you can hear the commentary on it, but I was just horrible, and my voice sounded like I was 5 years old. And I got ragged on for quite a while. Yeah.
Oh my God, the action.
Yeah.
Woody versus
It's
Spawn.
it's bad, and you guys can watch it and you'll know why it's so embarrassing.
It's on
Yeah,
the
it's-
YouTube channel. Watch the
it's on
video
the
that
YouTube
says our 5,000 subscriber celebration. It's under the specials playlist.
It's pretty great. So thank you for the question. Our next one comes in from the True Prince of Pro, who asks, recently Stephanie McMahon discussed the fact that WWE is considering introducing LGBT characters and themes into weekly programming by saying, when it makes sense, absolutely, we will integrate LGBT characters into our programming. We've had some GLAAD members come in and speak to our entire writing team and give a whole tutorial on sensitivities, the right words and the wrong words, and why they matter. So my question is, do you think an LGBT-based character could work in the WWE without offending the community? And do you think the comment on Raw by the jobber, Johnny Knockoff, of I like big sweaty men, does more harm than good... Knockout, I'm sorry, saying I like big sweaty man does more harm than good with the WWE with that community?
It's really tough. You know, in my traditional day-to-day work, you know, I do work for mental health, and one of the topics that we always talk about, and I know even bringing it up here is like controversial because not necessarily everybody respects everybody's beliefs, whether it be, you know, sexual preference or religion. Personally, it's like if you believe in a certain religion or if you have a certain sexual preference, good on you. Like that is your decision. Now, when you bring it on to WWE, we've seen that WWE for the females, like let's just talk like traditional heterosexual female, they have a problem creating diversity in the characters that hopefully now we see with Bayley, because usually they're like there's like, you know, either like I'm thinking in Spanish right now, but they're entitled characters like Maurice, etc. But they can't just do a humble character. AJ Lee was the most humble one, and like she was out there, you know, she was very very
crazy
different.
Side.
Exactly. So it's either crazy or entitled, and then with the men, you always have either like I'm better than you or I'm crazy, like Dean Ambrose. But you don't see a sensitive male character because that's looked down upon. So when you think about it from that, what?
Nothing.
Okay. But when you think about it like that, then it's like you bring on an LGBT character. First of all, what does that even look like? There are TV series that do have these characters, but then like you don't look like an LGBT person. Like you don't look heterosexual. You don't look homosexual. You look like however the hell you want to look. So from what I take from reading this is that they're going to create, and this is just pure speculation, a character that is molded so he looks or she looks like a specific percentage of the crowd. But you can even look like a Hispanic character, like the Shining Stars. They come out in guayaberas, which is traditional clothing. They have their accents. Like the problem with WWE is not whether they can or not integrate LGBT characters in a getaway, is that they seriously struggle with minorities and non-traditional beliefs. Because like you saw Reverend Devon, but tell me the day that the WWE is going to have an atheist character in programming. Never. That is never happening.
Well, I mean, Dean Ambrose kind of is. Isn't it symbol based? Oh wait, no, that's anarchy. Never mind, not atheism.
Exactly.
Yeah. Whoops. Okay. For this, I'm going to say that no, they shouldn't implement these types of characters because they're just going to offend people. It's going to be a horrible idea. I mean, look, Darren Young is openly gay and he's on the roster, and I think they do the best approach where he's just any other wrestler. That's like not a focus. The sexual preference of someone isn't the focus of a wrestling program, and I think that's the way it should be. Because as Juan said, they're not sensitive to people's cultures. Sheamus is, they make him as Irish stereotypical as you can. The Shining Stars. Every single person that has something different about them aside from typical American culture is just like the ultimate stereotype. So if they were to introduce like a character that was specifically around being gay, they're gonna be super offensive about it. I just feel like that's how it always ends up being. So if the whole thing with just sexual orientation is just not really a focus of WWE and we're just focusing on other things about characters, then that's the way to go about it.
Exactly. You know, when I think of companies that are able to handle sensitive topics in a good way, I don't think the WWE cracks the top 100. Their track record isn't exactly the best with that kind of stuff.
Hot lesbian action. 3-minute warning.
The fact that their lower third said the lesbians when they came
Billy
out.
and Chuck wedding.
Exactly.
And here's the key thing. Even if WWE just had a storyline where, like, Darren Young, somebody that's openly gay, just actually, like, in a non-crazy way falls in love with another male character, it's wrestling. So at some point, somebody's got to turn on somebody, somebody's got to cheat on somebody, somebody's got to beat the crap out of the other person. And then it's like, where do you draw the line? Point A is like, well, it's wrestling. So naturally, there's faces and heels. And B is like, but then aren't you like preaching to the choir of like, well, maybe this stereotype, like, you know, oh, those people, they're naturally going to fight each other. Oh, those Latinos, like, they're crazy Latinos. Like, it's really difficult because you got to be like a PC principal at some point.
And let's not forget, though,
it doesn't work.
Sorry to interrupt, but
go ahead.
Let's not forget just crowd reactions in general, right? Obviously, this type of thing is not well accepted in certain areas of the United States. And we don't want to turn something like this into like a heel gimmick where people are going to be booed for being gay or something like that. So it's really tough to do in wrestling. You can't really expect the crowd to be culturally sensitive. And it's sad that we have to say that, but, you know, we've seen crowds before just be assholes. Let's be real. So
exactly.
I think it's just, if you just leave it out of it and that's just not part of the program. It's not that anyone's, you know, talking down to it. It's just, that's just not part of what we're talking about. We're doing something else. Exactly.
Wrestling is it's based around so much of a strong character. And if your character, if that is one of its defining traits, how do you make yourself a strong character while doing that tastefully? And I don't know if wrestling as a whole is able to really process that in the proper way at this time.
There's a quick final example I just remembered that's just like the perfect example from the crowd, not WWE. When Big E Langston made his debut, like the internet, everybody was going, "Oh, right, black." Like, okay, so because he's a big guy and he happens to be black, then you have to associate him with another, like, why can't he just be Biggie? Like, why? And that is such a lighthearted example compared to so many other negative things that are out there and that's just a couple of years ago. Like, Biggie debuted what? Like 3 years ago, 2013, 2012 or something like that? And that's right around the corner. It sucks. It's a really dark topic because people just don't accept that much. Like they're always associated like white, black, different colors, different beliefs. It's tough. We got to move on because I can have a whole conversation about this.
Exactly. What a dark taint on one of the greatest debuts in wrestling history. If you haven't seen it, seeing Big E decimate John Cena while AJ Lee's theme plays in the background is truly a sight to behold. So thank you for the question. Our next one comes in from Cody Collier, who asks, do you think Finn Balor could return in the Royal Rumble match and win?
There's a very good chance. The Royal Rumble is always a great time to bring people back, so even if Balor's ready before then, they hold him off for the Rumble. So I think that's a pretty good spot.
I just want to point out, I just got a text message from a friend saying wrestling in Mondays and Tuesdays live is the best. So here's to like some information about like non-traditional fans enjoying Raw and SmackDown live.
Yeah, now, but is wrestling Thursday, or not Thursday, what am I saying? Is live wrestling Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday the best? That's where I start to question.
But regarding the Rumble, I don't think it should be the Rumble because he forfeited the champion. I mean, he was forced to drop it. So I think maybe at the Rumble, he gets the championship opportunity, like the rematch, maybe wins it, and then defends against the winner of the Rumble, which could be AJ Styles or something like that. Like, I see that scenario as opposed to Balor winning the Rumble.
I think Finn Balor is a great person that could win the Royal Rumble and not have everybody hate the build up to WrestleMania by doing so. Just have everybody champion Finn as that number one contender for the main event, and maybe everybody can walk away feeling good about the Royal Rumble one year. That'd be a nice change, wouldn't it? So thank you for the question. Our next one comes in from, I know I am. Our next one comes in from Allison W., who asks, when I work out, I listen to Bobby Roode's NXT theme. That is a glorious choice. What WWE theme would you work out to?
I have a laundry list, so I feel like I should go last.
All right. So recently, I've been working out to Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano's NXT theme. It is so good. For whatever reason, it is so good when weightlifting. Just like the tempo of it and how it has those breaks, and then when it goes into the and then you can just go and it pumps you up. You get some good reps in. I've been playing that on repeat. So I've been having like hour and a half workouts listening to just that, and it's been glorious. Pun intended.
Well, this reminds me that I probably should start working out, and I will choose Braun Strowman's theme, just so I can start off with that amazing scream. God, like, I should just mimic that in the gym, be one of those guys, even though, like, I have, like, no friggin' muscles on me, and I'm just grunting like I'm really getting my swole on.
Those 5-pound weights, man. Oh!
Yeah, serious. I should do that. That'd be hilarious.
Record it and post it. For me, there's a lot. Historically, I've listened to a lot of wrestling music while at the gym. I work out primarily at home with DDP yoga and all that, but when I did go to the gym regularly, I listened to a variety of themes that explains me way too much. So the combination includes Evolution, Triple H, Rob Conway's Just Look at Me theme. Yes, at gym, because that makes sense. Zack Ryder, Batista, Simon Dean, Buff Bagwell's theme. My whole life is defined by so many things that I'm identifying more and more each and every day because of this podcast. But that's just a small list. But Dean Ambrose, Sami Zayn is something that if I went back now, that would be the first song I listened to, just like, let's go, and then like ska and like fall and die.
I have a confession.
Uh-oh.
Sometimes when I do cardio recently, I put on Darren Young's theme and pretend I'm Darren Young and it's Bob Backlund talking to me. So thank you for the question.
Is that our
next one?
What about Juan Backlund?
Maybe, yeah, I'd love Juan Backlund to talk to me.
Look at me.
I own a watch, Mr. Juan. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. All right, so thank you for the question. Our next one comes in from NKBE1324, who asks, how do you feel about the first 4 people announced for the Cruiserweight division?
So there's a good combination in there. I think the one in particular I got to point out is T.J. Perkins. T.J. Perkins was the last, I mean, Suicide's back in TNA, but the last iteration of the first iteration of Suicide. And then, he was Manic for a very long time. And it's great to see a guy that's very talented, but was forced to deal with this character that has been played by 50 different wrestlers, get an opportunity as himself. And Brian Kendrick, I would love to see, like, what does this ring veteran have to do with the Cruiserweight division? So those are the 2 guys that I'm really looking forward to seeing based on what has been announced so far.
So it's Noam Dar, T.J. Perkins, Brian Kendrick, and...
Rich Swann was in the package, right? In the Vita package.
Yes, Rich Swann. That was the name I couldn't remember. I think that's a very solid mix. The one that kind of sticks out to me as kind of meh is Noam Dar, because I didn't really feel anything super special about him from just watching the Cruiserweight Classic, but I think the Cruiserweight division has potential to do something special. It's going to fall in a very weird place where do we start talking about the cruiserweight division as its own thing, or do we always start fantasy booking thinking about the cruiserweight division, like people moving out of the cruiserweight division into other divisions? Like, does that stay as a isolated bubble? I think that's going to be very interesting going forward, but very cool first few people to kick off the division.
I have to watch the Cruiserweight Classic, don't hate me.
Yes, you do.
I like Brian Kendrick.
We may get some live reactions right now because we're recording as SmackDown's going, and thankfully this just happened. So SmackDown revealed their championships, and this is not a joke. Ryan and Keith have not seen this. The tag team titles are the penny titles, just shinier and slightly brighter. And their championship is white, the white strap with a blue background behind the logo. So they are exactly the same championships as the ones on Raw. And I'm super happy that we're able to talk about this here because at the beginning.
Twitter. Ooh, I actually really like the women's title. Yeah, the red swoosh is a little weird, but other than that,
it's nice. I think the female championships look kind of cooler than the male championships right now.
The tag titles, I don't think they look that bad.
I think these are better iterations than the ones on Raw. So
the blue definitely looks better than the red.
Yeah, I honestly think the blue is weird, especially with the red swoosh, like you mentioned. But I do think that these titles look cool. I am a fan of the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. It almost looks like a nickel instead of a penny, or a dime instead of a penny.
So we're moving up. Before we get to maybe one or two more questions, I mean, this has never happened before. It's live. It's happening. So do you guys like the uniformity, like the uniform nature of the titles officially now?
Yep, I think it's the right approach. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, it's because that whole MMA style of they're all equal. Everything is equal footing. Like the SmackDown and Raw tag team titles look the same. They have the same idea. It's going to be the superstars that make them feel more special or not. And that's the way it should be.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. And like we were saying, it makes them feel like they're equal. I mean, this maybe could have been the opportunity for them to just change the tag titles overall, but it is what it is, and they don't look that bad. Definitely the out of the three new titles, these two look better than the Universal.
Agreed. All right. So thank you for the question / tangent afterwards. So we'll get to one more question for this show. So our final question of the show comes in from Gene Deman 94. Who asks, will the WWE ever realize Cesaro's potential?
I don't know, man. I think that what they're doing right now with those best of 7 series is almost an opportunity of, you want spotlight? Here it is. You're guaranteed to have a couple of matches with the same guy. It's your job now to make sure that the people care about it. So hopefully that really entitles or establishes them to an extent where they actually do something. There's, apparently they're going to end up getting a title shot. I don't know if it's for the Universal Championship or if it's for the Mid-Card Championship or some kind of tag opportunity, but I think that this could work out for him because I don't see Sheamus winning.
With Cesaro, I'm wondering what people are legitimately expecting. Now, does he deserve a couple main events here and there? Absolutely. I think Cesaro is extremely talented in the ring. He's an amazing talent. But when it comes to connecting with the crowd on a promo level and that type of charisma, I'm not talking about just match charisma, but that, that connection with on a promo level, it's not quite there, and I don't think he is with the crowd at that stage. And all the top guys that have ever existed have had that connection with the crowd. And that's something that instantaneously Enzo and Cass got. And, obviously particularly Enzo, but it's not quite there with Cesaro. I'm not saying it'll never happen, but I don't see Cesaro becoming the main event level guy that everyone wants him to be until that kind of potential is really hit.
Exactly. I mean, like, the sad part is with this best of 7 series, everything that's going to be showcased are things that we already know Cesaro can do. And we've seen it hundreds of times at this point. Like, we all know Cesaro's going to have incredible matches with whoever he's in the ring with, because that's what Cesaro does. The best of 7 isn't really going to focus on the parts where he really does need improvement, and that's on the microphone stuff. And
the character. We need the character in the mic. We need to hear him talk more. We know he can wrestle.
Yeah, exactly, because while he is so good in the ring, and the whole James Bond thing has gone a long way with building that character, more than really any other time recently, we've been reminded that it really doesn't matter how good you are in the ring in comparison to how good you need to be on the microphone. If you are great on the microphone, you will be over like that. And Enzo and Cass show that by a mile. So maybe the best of 7 won't end up being the best thing for Cesaro in the long term, because they're just beating the same drum that they continue to beat with Cesaro. Give him opportunities to show off what else he can do, and if he can't do it, set up situations where he can build on what he's able to do.
Excellent thoughts about that, man. And thank you to everybody that sent in your questions. I want to quickly point out, thank you to Collector9000 because he's the one that tweeted us and tagged a couple of people, and that's how I found out that the titles were revealed during Smackdown. So whenever anybody is watching wrestling or you see that something's happening, send us a tweet on social media. We're going to get some of these questions possibly in next week that we couldn't get to. A lot is happening in wrestling, and it's going to be a packed episode next week because we're not going to be talking about who's going to be champion, but rather who is officially the new Universal Champion. So without further ado, I will now hand the microphone. Well, you have your microphone, Ryan, so just talk, really. Just go.
But don't take it too long. We wouldn't want to interrupt another Snorlax or something like that.
Oh, Ryan, wait, I got to take a selfie. Give me a second. I got to take a selfie quick here. No, I don't. What? Actually, keep going. I'm messing you up on purpose.
First, before I go into my official conclusion, I would like to thank Smackdown for doing something relevant in the first 20 minutes so that we can actually cover something on Smackdown this week. But we want to thank you guys for tuning in to another edition of the Byte That podcast. Per usual, got a few exciting things to go over, including our WWE t-shirt giveaway. Less than 2 weeks. That's right, less than 2 weeks for you to enter to win the WWE t-shirt of your choosing. All you have to do is head over to patreon.com/bytethat and pledge a donation. And there's tons of sweet rewards. We're working towards our first goal, which is to do a 12-hour Twitch stream.
12 hours?
12 hours of us. Can you handle it? It's like
Can you handle 12 hours of me?
That is
you can.
2 SummerSlams worth. Oh God, is Keith okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, alright. Guys, Keith was just glitching out on us anyway.
This is tearing down.
As I was saying, that's 2 SummerSlams worth of streaming content, which may or may not be a good thing, who knows, but it definitely will be a fun time. So head over to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Hit that subscribe button. We've got tons of content there, including us playing that pro wrestling Power Moves game, which was a lot of fun. We make fun of some interesting wrestlers they put on that roster. And this Friday, we're talking about what WWE pay-per-views should come back. That was a really great discussion. And if you'd like to contact us in any way or check out any of our social media, head over to bytethat.com. And all the information's there about how you can ask questions for the show and interact with us. So I've done enough talking. My Snorlax, by the way, has Zen Headbutt and Hyper Beam, which is pretty awesome. He's like 1390 CP, so I'm gonna have to check if his IVs are good so I can put that sucker in gyms. So thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you next week. We will see you next week. It's not just about me, man. We'll see you next week.
So selfish. First, it's like the Snorlax. We stopped the podcast because
priorities,
of you.
Guys.
And
priorities.
Then it's only about you. You really are the heel.
Rest in peace, Harambe. One love. 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 Love.